Today we'll break down the colorful frosted glass text animation that I've created for my video on 50 best plugins for After Effects. Hi, I'm Dennis. I've been doing motion design for 17 years. I've created designs used by NBC Universal, the Boston Globe, and some Hollywood cinematographers. And now I will show you how to make this frosted glass text animation in 4 simple steps. First, we'll create an animated background. Second, we'll make a frosted glass effect. Third, we'll create a text animation. And lastly, I'll show you how to apply this effect to any of your videos to get an endless number of these nice colorful backgrounds. You will find this project file for free on my Patreon. Let's begin with the composition settings. This composition is 4K, 12 FPS and 10 seconds long. And now let's move on to the background. We'll build this text animation from the ground up. So first goes the background. The background is a solid layer. You can create it by going to Layer New, Solid, and I've applied a 4-color gradient on top. For the gradient, I've used these colors: light blue, pink, dark blue, and dark violet. I've placed these colors right here, right here, right here, and right here. Basically almost in the corners except for this one. Then I wanted these colors to wiggle a bit on the background. So I've added a wiggle expression that makes them move like this. To add the expression, alt-click on this stopwatch and it will open the expressions menu. Then type in wiggle 1,90. Repeat for all the points. And this will add this kind of a wiggle. But this background, it looks boring. I wanted to add some movement to it. So I've added a line. Just a simple shape layer that's animated to move from right to left. Then I've added one more line. It's a little bit more thin. It goes from left to right. By the way, you can create shape layers by deselecting all the layers and hitting the rectangle tool. Just drag it and you will get the same shape layer. Then I've added the third line. This is how all of them animated. They move with different speed and in a little bit different directions. And also they have a little bit different rotation. You can find the project file for this and all my other tutorials on my Patreon. Moreover, you'll find there all the motion graphics that you can see in my YouTube videos. If you liked any motion graphics that you've seen in my videos, it's there. Check it out at patreon.com/DennisZhilin. Then I wanted to add a spotlight. So I've created a circle with the help of ellipse tool right here. Hit Q a few times to select the ellipse tool. To create a perfect circle, hold Ctrl-Alt-Shift or Command-Option-Shift, click and drag. And this will create a perfect circle. I've also animated this spotlight to move from right to left. And it has an opacity of 33, so it's not as bright. Then I've duplicated the spotlight and I've increased its opacity to 71. Also, I have increased its size, and now it moves from left to right. And as you can see, it's animated by scale. The scale goes from 121 to 183. You can create basically any scale in animation. I just found this one not too bad. Then goes the Spotlight 3, the biggest one. It moves from left to right. Its opacity is 20, the lowest of all of them, and it's animated by scale from 354 to 476. And now it looks like a mess, but we will add one more layer. It's called Blur and Noise. And I've basically added blur and noise to it. So let's turn the blur and noise layer on and add Fastbox Blur. Just type in here Fastbox Blur and you'll have it right here. Now this Fastbox Blur makes everything a little bit more interesting. It almost has the feeling as if something is moving behind the frosted glass, but it almost gives this feeling. And I wanted to convey the full feeling of being behind the frosted glass. Hence, I've added the noise HLS. You can also find it here. And now take a look at this. I'll scale it up for you. The blur alone was just adding the feeling of frosted glass, but not the texture of the frosted glass. And after adding the noise, it added the texture itself. So now it looks way more like a frosted glass. It looks way more cool. Then I've just added an S-curve to make it more vibrant. Here is how the animation looks with the curve. Also, it's dithering the gradient a bit so it doesn't look like this. And now this background looks absolutely fine. You can just add your text animation and it will look clean and modern. Like this. But I wanted to add a little bit more grunge. Hence, I've imported the fine concrete texture. I took all the textures from the texturelabs.org website, so go check them out right there. First, I've inverted this texture because by default, it would look like this. I didn't like these dirty spots, I wanted them to be bright. So I've made everything else to be more dark and these spots to be brighter. Also, I've added curves to make everything darker. Here's the difference. It's subtle, but it's there. And I've set the blending mode to overlay. The opacity is 46%. Oh, the wrong texture. The opacity is 23%. If it's on 100%, it's way too intense. To make it subtle, I went with 23. Then goes the next paper texture. By default, it had blue color, which is also fine, but I didn't want the texture to introduce its own color into my image. So I have desaturated it with the help of a black and white effect, here's before and after. And after that I've darkened this texture with the curves, like this. The blending mode is overlay 2, and I've set the opacity to 46%. First I'll finish with the vignette and camera, and then we will go to the text. It's a basic vignette that darkens the edges. You can create the vignette with the help of an adjustment layer. Go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer. Then double-click on the ellipse tool and it will create a round mask. Go to Mask Feather Controls and set it to 350 and invert the mask. Then drop the curves on top and drop them down. Or you can create this vignette with the help of a single click of a single button with the help of my free script. Check this out. I've got no layers selected and bam, I've got one more vignette. And I can darken the edges even more. You can find this free script on my Patreon at patreon.com/DenisZhilin. The same is with the camera. I've created a camera and I've added a null object that controls the camera. I've made the null object 3D and have parented the camera to the null. Or you can create all this rig with a single click of this button of my free script. Again, it's on Patreon for free. This animation is static. And you might ask, why do I need the camera right here? This is because I wanted all the image to wiggle.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Here it is. It's static, it doesn't move. And I wanted it to wiggle with the text like it was shot on film. So I've created the camera that would wiggle all the layers all together. I've made all the layers 3D, and in camera controls, I went to Transform, Anchor Point, alt-click on the anchor point. It had opened the expression window and I've typed in wiggle 12,2. And this added this wiggle here. This wiggle is very subtle, but it's there. You can just take a look at my pointer and the dark spot above the pointer. It wiggles. Once we've done with the whole background setup, let's move on to the text. First thing that you would want to do with your text is actually go into the composition settings. Right-click, Composition Settings, Advanced, and now set the shutter angle to 360 degrees. By default, it's 180 degrees, but this makes the motion blur not as long. If you set it to 360, it will be longer. And this is the kind of style that I wanted to achieve. Let's go through all the effects and then we will end up on the animating the text. So first goes the Fastbox Blur, with the blur radius 0.4 and iterations 3. It just blurs the edges a bit, so the text doesn't look as sharp. It helps to imitate this film look. Then I've added the glow with the pink color A, but actually it doesn't really matter because if it's white, it almost changes nothing. So the glow threshold is 60, glow radius 3 and glow intensity 1. Then I've duplicated this glow and increased the glow radius to 77 and set the color B to fuchsia. Again, white will work as well, I was just experimenting with the colors. And by the way, the font is Lato Bold. Once we've done with the style, let's take a look at how the animation is created. Unfold the text layer, go to Text, and here's the Animator 1. And this Animator 1 is basically a position animation. You can add it by going here, Animate, and select the position right here. It will give you the same controls. What you want to do here is select based on words, mode add, amount 100, and the shape ramp up is high 100% and is low 0. Then animate the position from minus 1695 or so, just move it somewhere here. As you can see, the Y position is here. I didn't change the X position at all. And then in 10 frames, it goes down to the very center, basically to 0. These are just 2 keyframes. And of course, I've eased the curve on the last keyframe. Select the curve, go to Graph Editor, and it was like this. I've grabbed it like this, all the way to the left. So it goes fast at the beginning, and then it slows down very smoothly. And it creates this animation. What's really interesting is that this effect is not only limited to this text animation. We can put the text behind the glass too. To do so, let's duplicate the text by selecting and hitting Ctrl D, switch off the original text animation, and let's drop this text somewhere here. Next, we'll increase the scale to approximately 300 pixels and place it somewhere here. Let's extend it here, like this. And now, if we just put it below the blur and noise layer, the text will disappear, because it's blurred way too much. So we'll return it, then we'll duplicate blur and noise, and put it about the new possibilities. But this time we will decrease the blur radius to, let's say, 20, or maybe even 10. Yeah. And we will delete the curves because the text looks way too contrasty. And this is how the text looks behind the glass. But we can make it even better. Select this text layer, go to, let's say, 1 second and 3 frames. Select the blur and noise 2 layer, set a keyframe for blur radius, sound looks nice, set a keyframe. Then go to the very beginning and set the blur radius to, let's say, 50. And now the text is really blurred when it goes down, and the blurriness decreases when the animation is over. Let's adjust the keyframe so that the blur goes to 7 right here. We can even increase the blur radius in the beginning to, let's say, 140. And let's ease the last keyframe, easy ease in, go to Speed Graph Editor, and drag this right part to the left. So the animation starts really fast and then it smoothes out gradually. We can even extend it a bit. And here's how this animation looks right now. And that's not it. You can put anything below this blur layer and you will get this frosty glass effect. For example, this is my map animation from one of the previous tutorials. You can drop it just below the blur and noise, and now it's way too bright. But we can change the color of the new possibilities layer to something dark, and now we have this frosted glass effect. You can see the map animation is bleeding through on the background, but map itself is not visible because of a very intense blur. To make it less intense and make the map more visible, we can bring the map animation above the first blur and noise layer, right here. It's blurry, but you can see the outlines, not just the color, because comparing to the first blur and noise map, where you can only see the color, now we can see the details and even the text in the background. Let's remove this text. Now this text doesn't bother us. You can also drop any video below this blur and noise layer and get awesome colorful background. At the moment, we have this background with the help of the spotlights and the background color. But you can replace it with any video, just drop it here, right below blur and noise layer, and you might get these cool colors. This is an edit of my maps that I've created previously, and when we duplicate the title, disable the first one, and set the color to white again, it looks really nice with this map background. Of course, sometimes it doesn't work because of the very light background. When a title is bright, it works really well with dark colors and very saturated ones. If your background is white or almost white, you will need to darken it a bit. To do so, select the video layer of yours, go to Effect Controls, and in Effects and Presets, type in Curves. Drop it on top, and drop the top of the curve down a bit. Now your colors are not as bright, but still they're very saturated. Here's before, here's after. This specific color works better without the curves, but right here, curves work really good. And this effect brings you endless possibilities for cool, colorful backgrounds. Also, if you want your background to be visible, drop it above the blur and noise number 1, or just disable it. And we can use more sharp text, new possibilities, right here. This makes the background more blurry and textured, but the title more visible, especially if you enable the curves on your background video and drop them like this. And it works exceptionally well with the dark colors, for example with this one of my map animations. You will find this project file for free on my Patreon at patreon.com/DenisZhilin. Like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this one. And check out my Patreon page for the project files and motion graphics from my YouTube videos. Also, you might like this video, so go check it out.